Live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group in beautiful downtown Maplewood, it's the St. Louis Realtor Podcast with your host, Adam Kruse.
Welcome everybody to the St. Louis Realtor Podcast live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group. Today is June 20th, 2018. Of course, I have my fabulous co-host, Shannon St. Pierre, here on the rooftop with me. Shannon, say hello to everybody.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest. We have Caleb Lewis. He's a new real estate investor, and he was at this event with us that we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, we wanted to just mention a couple things. The Hermann London Real Estate Group has been getting a lot of really good feedback from people about our podcast. We've had a lot of investors and, of course, friends and realtors from other companies telling us that they like the podcast, basically, right?
Right.
And so we just wanted to mention to people, if you're thinking about being a realtor, or if you're a realtor already and you're thinking about being a Hermann London realtor, just please call. Just reach out to me. I'm the broker owner, Adam Kruse. You can call me, 314-210-5115. You're welcome to reach out to any of our agents if you want to. Call Shannon and or anybody else and just ask them about their Hermann London experience or their kind of experience just being a real estate person. You know, we have a really wide variety of different types of realtors and investors and property managers and all sorts of types of people that work here, and it's a really diverse group of, I guess, business models, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I think that's the thing that sets Hermann London apart is that it covers almost all bases when it comes to real estate.
Yeah, we've got commercial and association management. We're doing a little bit of everything and a lot of some of it. So it's been great. But anyway, we just thought we'd mention it. If you're interested in talking about being an investor or a realtor with us, to just reach out. So what we really are going to talk about today is we recently had a panel. So we're through the St. Louis Association of Realtors. There's a group called YPN. I was on the board for YPN for like 8 years. And this year I came back as the MC for this event we call 30 Under 30. And so what we did is we flew in, or what YPN did is flew in 4 people who have won the National Association of Realtors and Realtor Magazine's 30 Under 30 award, I guess you can say. So each year they choose 30 spectacular realtors who are under 30 years old. And the reason why the St. Louis chapter of YPN likes to fly these people in and wine and dine them and ultimately put them up on a panel so we can ask them a bunch of questions in front of people is the idea is that they're super successful people in their own markets, but by coming to St. Louis and talking to us, they kind of have nothing to hide because they're not our competitors. So there's no reason for them not to tell us about a little secret that they have or a way that they do things because, you know, we're not competing with them, right? And so it's really awesome. And this year we had, I'm just going to kind of go through and list out who we had. Jordan Salisbury from Lake of the Ozarks and Osage Beach, Missouri. She's with Keller Williams down there. We had Jennica Holmquist. By the way, Jordan won the award in 2018. Three of the 4 won it in 2018. So Jennica Holmquist from Washington Lifestyle Homes, Keller Williams Realty in Tacoma, Washington. She's 28 years old. And let's see, Michael Pennisi. This guy is involved in everything, but he was the 2012 winner, but he's on the National Association of Realtors board now, and he's from Coldwell Banker in New Jersey. And then lastly, we had Isabel Affinito. She won in 2018. She's from a company called J.B. Goodwin in Austin, Texas. She's 29. And she also has her own podcast called Funky Homes of Austin Podcast. So if you're interested in checking out her podcast, then I'm sure you can find it on wherever you're listening to this podcast, right? So what we did is we had this huge list of questions, and I was standing up there, and I just asked these people questions, and they can answer however they wanted to, okay? And so what we want to do on today's podcast with Caleb and Shannon is just talk through what some of the questions were, what their answers were, and what we thought or what we learned and that we thought was interesting. But if you don't mind, Caleb, I'd like to ask you just to tell the listeners briefly a little bit about yourself and why, what were you doing at this event, and I guess what you're doing in real estate currently.
So thanks for having me. And first off, I am a kind of apprentice to Adam right now at Hermann London. So I've just been learning about all aspects of basically everything in real estate. And right now I go to school at Ole Miss, so studying a little bit of real estate down there, and hopefully want to come back up to St. Louis after I graduate and start a career in real estate. And the reason I went to this conference and the panel is just to learn more about these young realtors and how they've been successful.
Yeah, and so it was interesting, right? We started off by asking them what we called rapid fire questions, which was just a bunch of basically yes or no or one-word answer questions. And I was surprised to hear that none of them advertise on Zillow. None of them advertise on Realtor.com. Some of them do Facebook advertising, right? And I guess almost none of them did open houses or door knocking or even geographic farming, right? It seems like...
I thought a couple of them did. Geographic
Which one?
farming.
Geographic farming?
Yeah.
I would guess that Jordan does because she's focused at the Lake of the Ozarks. But I think Jennica and Isabel were both kind of focused on their sphere of influence and, just kind of like, especially Jennica said that she focused a lot on networking and kind of getting out there and getting connected to people. We asked how many hours a week they work. I think all of them said a lot, too many. I don't know. I don't keep track, whatever.
Well, yes. And the hours blend in with the everyday personal life. So you can't keep track necessarily.
Right. But all of them are residential people. In the past, we've had commercial people in there.
So you also asked about social media. Social media is where, they seem to all be very active. And then the sales teams, if they have support, assistance, and they all said yes. So
yeah, let's talk.
That's kind of the common thread there is the extra help, the assistance, the transaction coordinators, and social media.
So let's talk about their social media stuff because they kind of each had a little bit of a different approach, right? I think a couple of them hired social media people to sort of manage their Facebook or manage their Instagram. Remember Jennica, I think, was like, check out my Instagram. My girl's killing it right now.
Right. So they all have someone helping them out with social media.
Okay. But Isabel specifically, I guess, does a lot of her own social media, like Facebook Live type of videos. She said she did a final walkthrough and made a video where she was in the pool. But she does a lot of interesting videos, it sounds like, and it kind of trying to be funny and relatable, and which is what a lot of realtors approaches, I think.
Her main theme and point was that you can do a video on anything. So the video where she jumped in the pool and it was a really hot day was not about necessarily real estate. It was just some thing about it being very hot out, and it didn't necessarily have to do with real estate. And she said that is and has been her most watched or one of her most watched recently.
So a lot of them, I guess, had assistants, or most of them had at least what they would call a transaction coordinator, somebody that they paid to do their paperwork essentially and keep all their tasks and stuff like that in line. They paid their transaction coordinators in different ways, right? A couple of them had them on salary, and some of them paid per deal. I think some of them would give them more money depending on how many deals they were doing. You heard, I don't think I remember hearing any of them say that they gave necessarily like a percentage of their deals. It was more like the more deals I do, the more money you make. But it was kind of like still more of like a per deal thing. Yeah,
for the transaction coordinators, it was still a flat fee, except for the one that started, and I can't remember which one was so busy that they just hired her on full time and started providing a salary. Actually,
yeah, she used to use a transaction coordinator company. And then that company which was like one person and maybe her assistant or whatever. And then that company ended up being dominated by, I think it maybe was Isabel. And so Isabel was like, hey, transaction coordinator, 95% of the deals that you're doing are for me. Why don't you just come on and be like my full-time person and stop doing this for other people? I really loved hearing this, because I talk a lot about how I want our agents to get assistants and use transaction brokers, and they kept talking about what my highest and best use as a realtor is to be out meeting buyers, meeting sellers, and going on appointments, essentially, right? And so they all felt like if they're sitting in the office forwarding contracts around or, communicating with title companies, that's not their highest and best use. And I just really love that they say that because it's sort of backing up what I'm always trying to get our realtors to do.
Right. So the number one thing that they all did was get a transaction coordinator pretty early in the process.
Yeah. And so then some of them have assistants too that would do things like some of them, I think Jordan had like a showing assistant, which is someone that she could just have go out and basically open the doors for her. If she was too busy to show properties to someone, she would send out her showing assistant who would literally just go open the doors. But then if the people had any specific questions, they were supposed to come back to Jordan, right?
Right.
And she would pay that showing assistant a small percentage actually of the deal if the people ended up buying the house that she showed them. And then some of them had assistants that would like go get my laundry or go get my dry cleaning and that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then some of them had assistants that would do things like, handle my marketing and update my LinkedIn or anything like that. Actually, I think most of them said they don't use LinkedIn, but that they had like assistants who sort of do some of their non-specifically transaction-related stuff, and it's great. I was really surprised by all the
business.
Yeah. I was surprised by how many of them had all these different employees and stuff. These are young realtors, fairly new to the business, but they're doing great. And I love it.
I think it is interesting because everybody on this panel this year did have multiple people on their team. Maybe not as employees, but they had the transaction coordinator. They had like an assistant. They also had some social media person. So it seemed they had at least two or more. And as where last year, I feel like they all had transaction coordinators, but not necessarily additional team members.
Right. So speaking of teams, it seems like they all kind of talked about their teams. And Michael Pennisi, I thought, made a really interesting point. We asked what their first hire was for their team, and they basically either said that's assistant or they got a buyer's agent, And he had this totally different approach, like he did for most of the panel or most of the interview or whatever, that his first hires were what he would call bird dogs.
Yes. And I thought it was a wildly interesting concept.
Wasn't it? So he went out and found like random people in the community, for example, a hotel manager.
Yes.
And somehow convinced this hotel manager, go get your real estate license. I'll pay for it. I'll pay all the expenses related to you having your real estate license. But then when someone comes into your hotel and has a real estate need, refer them to me.
Right.
And if I close a deal, I'll pay you a referral fee.
It's an interesting concept. I think I had 1,000 other questions behind how the logistics of it that we obviously didn't have time to talk about on the panel, but it would be something that
I guess some of my questions are like, because he acted like he would have a lot of these bird dogs out there, right? And so he also mentioned that he paid for their licensing and their schooling and then all their yearly realtor fees and stuff like
and
that.
And their monthly MLS stuff.
Their monthly MLS, all that stuff. So they can't have that. He can't have that many of them out there doing it. But if it is successful, like with the hotel manager, first to me, I'm like, wait, so people are coming in town to stay at a hotel because he said that guy sends him a lot of sellers. I'm like, what are these people staying at a hotel for in town if they have a home in town to sell?
Yeah, so there was a couple conflicting statements, like the hotel manager. Mm-hmm. To me, I look at a hotel manager and think, yes, they come across a lot of people. But I don't feel like it would be a lot of local people. And they're coming into town for the ball game or they're coming into town to visit family or St. Louis or to go to the Arch, but not buy real estate. That doesn't seem like a reason you stay at a hotel. Unless I'm missing something. I don't know. That's where I'm kind of like, there's 1,000 questions here that...
Yeah, and the craziest thing about it was that he said the hotel manager was the one that brought him the most business throughout his whole career.
I guess so. For example, when we just had our 10-year party down at the Lumiere Hotel and Casino, it's sort of a reversal, but that manager was looking to buy a home. And so our agent, Krista, who was with me, was like, hey, I want to be your realtor, and she almost got a deal out of him. But if people maybe are getting married and having like events and stuff at these hotels, maybe that's where they're meeting people from in town that are kind of having these transitional points in their life. I just thought it was really interesting.
But the reason, just to kind of cover, the reason he had these people go get their license is so that he could legally pay them a referral fee.
And so they're probably actually not necessarily realtors with the MLS and with super keys and all that stuff. They're probably real estate agents who are basically like have their license what we would call on referral.
Yes.
And so their yearly fees are significantly lower, which definitely would help him out. They all had these teams. What other interesting members of their teams did they have? I don't think any of them had a listing agent, right? They were still all focusing as the listing agent.
Except for maybe Michael.
Michael used to have a team, and then he kind of like passed his team off to his wife because now he's just acting as the broker for his office.
Okay.
So I don't know if before he passed his team off, if he had a listing agent or not. So one of the big questions that kind of got them all going is we asked, what do you have that others who started when you did or before you and aren't as successful don't have? So that question is a mouthful, but I think what we were getting at there is a lot of people get their real estate license, right? And if 10 people get their real estate license, it seems like, and I'm just making this statistic up, but it seems like 2 of them will still be licensed 3 years later, and 8 of them will not be licensed, right? So to me, that question was saying, you sat in real estate class, you probably made some friends with the people in class, and now those people are either not realtors anymore or they're not doing as much business as you, right? And they're certainly not here on this panel today. And so they all had a little bit different answers to that.
Yeah, except for actually what I got from that answer was something that was, I think, more validation for me. And so that's what I remember is that they sat there and they all confirmed and said and stated that it took about 3 years. 3 years was that turning point. I think we're used to hearing, stick it out for a year, just your first year in real estate is really hard, and then it'll turn around, it'll get better, you'll start getting business that, you got to really stick it out. I feel like that wasn't necessarily true for me. I feel like, my first year was just kind of, you're getting your feet wet, and then you're just still like for a couple, just still kind of trying to find your way. Even.
Yeah.
And so they all had said 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. And I'm like, that's dead on. I've never heard anyone else say that to me because that's always that first year and how many drop out after the first year because it is so difficult. But and so that's what I kind of remember about that question is if you just hang in there for 3 years and you show up, so you can't be hanging out on the couch for 3 years, but if you're showing up.
I really love that you're sharing that. I think you're kind of being vulnerable and saying that, it's been my first 3 years were a challenge,
Right.
And from the broker's perspective, what people always ask is, how long until I'll make money, And the sort of the spin I think that brokers put on that is sort of like answering how long until you make your first check, right? And I think maybe that's what they're asking, but what they really should be asking, it's kind of part of our conversation now, is how long until I'm making money, right? Until I'm actually like making a living.
Yeah, it's not so much even making a living because yes, that is one aspect of it, but really getting your business going and where you're in it long enough where you're actually getting referrals and and somehow you've found a niche that supplies a chain of customers.
So they all sort of did different stuff, I guess, for their first 3 years, which everyone's answer was sort of like, I just ran around crazy.
And pretty much. And I feel like that's what you kind of do is trying to figure out what because even as a broker, every broker's like, what's your niche? Where's your focus? Where's your focus? If you listen to podcasts, what's your focus? What's your focus? And then you're like, I don't know. And it's pressure, it's stress. And yet all of these confirmed that it did take that long. It does take that long to just kind of figure it out.
Caleb, for you, you've been doing this intern or apprenticeship for like a month now or something like that. Yeah, have you been surprised by how kind of weird and different every day seems to be?
Yeah, it actually kind of like motivates me to pursue this career like even more than what I had already like thought about doing it. And hearing that 3 years is kind of like reassuring for me because like I was kind of wondering that also, like how long is it going to take me to make that first check or be able to make a living? But being in this internship and not like having the experience before in the real estate world, like it's just kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities that you could have and the different scenarios and different avenues you could go down in the real estate world. So
yeah, I think I did the same thing. I ran crazy my first 3 years. I got so many stories, and I still do, but I just had no idea really what I was doing or why I was doing it. I just tried to get myself in as many different situations as I possibly can or could. And I think that's kind of like what our goal is for new agents at our company too. We don't try to like force them into some sort of niche right off the bat. We give them lots of opportunity or lists and different things that they could do, but then we try to help narrow it down so that there's a little bit more of a focus there. But I really wish that every new agent could have heard them say that, because I think people think that it's going to be easier than it is. And so when we have a new agent and I'm like, you need to work really hard, you need to work long hours, you need to be doing everything you can, I think they sort of hear that but almost shrug it off because they just assume that I don't really need to do that. This will just come to me,
Right. And I had a meeting yesterday with a newer agent, and I think she got licensed in August. And so I was having a coffee with her, and I think she's in that struggle point. What's my focus? What am I supposed to be doing? How come this isn't easier? And she's like, am I doing the right thing? And I'm like, you are like every other agent. Let me confirm that this is a total normal path. I said, I think for the first couple years, maybe at least, I think I said that at least once a week. And probably, what am I doing? Should I just go get a job, that actually pays the salary, insurance, and like all this? So I said, you still have a while probably of doubting that. But if you really love real estate, which is my thing, I really love real estate. Mm-hmm. Just stick with it. It will come. Just stick it out.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the really interesting things about real estate is every day is something different, and you just have to work really hard to keep pushing through and become successful, and it's something I'm looking forward to.
And it's a shiny object syndrome too. When you're new, you're trying everything because you don't know what works, and that's a hard part too.
Yeah. Caleb, you probably had no idea you were going to be on a podcast today.
No, I didn't.
Speaking to how every day is different.
Yeah, here we are. What are you going to change in your business in the next year? We asked them that question. Did anything from that stand out to you guys?
No, so I don't feel like they even answered that question necessarily. And then you changed it, and I think posed it. Do you think anything's going to change in the industry? Or maybe Michael kind of repositioned that. My
favorite answer to what are you going to change in your business in the next year was one of the people, I forget which one it was, but she talked about how she's going to continue to try to basically automate things, right? And she's trying to systematize things.
Right.
And I love that, right? So anything that we can automate or systematize, or I don't know if this was her, Isabel's answer to this question, but anything she can take off her plate, again, to allow her to be out there with clients is something that she's going to try to do.
Yes.
And I think, any tools or anything that we can use to do that is great. We'll talk a little bit about some of the tools they shared coming up, but what do you think is going to change in our industry? I think that's where Michael had a lot to say, and he was talking about the different companies that have come out that will, I'll list your home for a nickel, right? And then the different brokerages that have come out that say, work here and, have a closing and throw me a nickel, right? And what else was he saying about the changes that he saw in our industry?
Well, I think they addressed the changes as Zillow has rolled out. What is that program called where you can sell your own home?
Yeah, where they'll make an offer on your house.
Make me an offer type of whatever that they've rolled out in a couple markets and are testing. And he said, if you want a really good laugh, kind of go through it and look at some of the details of it. And I have done that, and it is a 9% fee that they are charging for that. And you have no one walking you through the process.
And they only offer you, is it 70 or 80% of market value?
Well, that's if so you can, I think, list your home. I think, obviously, but yeah, the where they're buying it, it's 80% of the value. But we all know that estimates are not always correct.
Yeah. So I think he was saying, which I agree with this, right? I'm always worried, and everyone probably always worried about all these new technologies and all these new companies and stuff that come out, and we're going to do it for less, and or
we're going to help you sell your house by yourself.
There's all these different things that come out because they're trying to change the realtor industry. But what I love is that the fact that there is 80 things out there trying to do that, it causes a lot of noise, and it's harder to pay attention to any particular one of them, which gives them less traction, I think. But then also the thing is, like, if something's too good to be true, then it probably is. So all these things that are like, we'll sell your home for a nickel, right? It's like, wow, that's great. But that's too good to be true, right? So there's all sorts of things there that you're missing. Or right. Zillow says, I'll buy your house. Yeah, for like half of what it's worth or whatever, And so there's always kind of like the fine print. And I definitely liked having them sort of
validate
that
no one
argument,
thinks that realtors are going away. I think that they just are going to be challenged in other ways.
And the other thing that Michael said that was interesting is that he kind of two things. He sort of looks forward to this, like if there's going to be a downturn sometime in the next few years, he sort of looks forward to it because he feels that him and his realtor team are going to be prepared for it, because I guess of the training and stuff like that he offers, but also his point is that anytime there's a downturn, some realtors sort of like run towards it and they double their advertising. They increase their market share during the downturn because they're saying, I'm here, I'm strong, and let me take advantage of this downturn. And most realtors say, oh my gosh, there's a downturn. I need to kind of have that, what would we call that? Like a fixed mindset. And they say, oh, I need to cut my advertising. And yeah, like you say, tighten the belt. And what they end up doing is getting less business and losing their market share during that time. So for me, listening to that, I was like, dang, I think I can be guilty of that sometimes, being like, oh, I don't know, maybe I won't, do that major update to our website because it's who knows what's going to change, or, maybe I won't do that mailer because who knows what's going to change. And so I was glad that he said that, and I think I have to kind of remind myself of that mindset when I'm having that mental thought.
But I think that that's a basic marketing strategy. If you've even in the marketing world outside of real estate, the best time to advertise is in down markets because that's when you can increase your market share.
Yeah. So we also asked, what advice do you have for someone who just gotten their license? Did that hit either of you guys? Do you remember their answers for that?
I think one of the things, it might have been on this question that they said, was just different project management apps that they use and just how it helped them like kind of organize everything and see like where their money was coming from. So like he kept track of the money that was coming in from the hotel manager to see how much revenue he was making from that avenue of marketing. And then he would have another section of the management app that would show him how much money is coming in from sending out postcards or just different things like that, so you can focus on the thing that's most successful for you.
So I also like that. Thanks for reminding me of that, because we do a yearly business planning meeting at our company, and actually this year we're going to do a bi-yearly one. We're going to do one in a month or so. And I think that what we'll do, we always give out your numbers, right? Like, hey, Shannon, here's your numbers from the last year, and these are all the sales that you had, all the closings that you had, and it gives you the address, right? But we just sort of put that in your folder and move on. I'm guessing, and based on what he said, I think there would be value to us having you take a few minutes and break down, okay, this closing, where did this one come from? This one there, where did this one come from? And kind of break that into categories of like, this is sphere of influence, this is from Facebook ads, this is from networking or whatever. And so our agents can really see where their business is coming from. Yeah,
so they all said that they all, at the end of the year, so they do track it. They track it in different ways. And one guy just uses an Excel spreadsheet, which is amazing to me. But they all did state that at the end of the year, they do a review of where their business came from. And they all confirm. They're like, oh, yeah. I definitely sit down in December. And one was like, I sit down in January. And that helps me plan out, see where my business came from. And it's surprising sometimes where it's come from, and so then they start honing it, and more you get to hone it.
That's how a couple of them, I think that's how they stopped advertising on Zillow, right?
So specifically, I think it was Isabel who was saying that she quit Zillow because while she did profit from it, so if she said specifically if we were making $1.50 and we only spent $1, but the amount of energy and that had to go towards to get that $1.50 was exponential in terms of how the rest of her business was being.
close 3
Played out.
deals and make like an income off one of them. So technically you made an income, but could she have been
meanwhile,
closing 2 deals by some other way?
Yes, and meanwhile you're running around trying to please 20 buyers or buyers and/or sellers that never come to fruition. So it's just this, and which is one of my big issues with Zillow too, which will be another podcast.
It'll be interesting to see our whole where people do that evaluation because
I think you should do that at the mid-year one too. So far this year, sit down, think about where your business has come from.
Because it'll be fresh in mind, and they'll be able to everyone will probably be able to remember more. But the whole like 80-20 rule, where they might find that 80% of their income comes from 20% of whatever they're doing, and hopefully that means they should focus a little bit more on that stuff. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that you, in general, can't just like stop doing anything else? Like with the 80-20 rule, you can't exactly only do that 20% of stuff. You still kind of have to do at least some of the 80% of activity that breeds the 20% of the results.
Yes, I think that, they all said the focus has to be that 20%. There is some of that on the 80%, but that's where they're trying to create the automations.
So one of the things that we deal with in our business a lot, and luckily, I guess it's not as much as it could be, but I get calls sometimes from some of our agents, new or old, right? Or new or experienced, I guess I should say. Mm-hmm. And they're dealing with an agent who's being super rude to them, who's being like nasty, right? And just totally unprofessional, calling them names, cussing them out, making them cry, whatever. And it's way more common than it should be that our agents have to deal with agents from other companies that are just nasty to deal with, you know? Right. And so we asked them, how do you guys deal, or what advice do you have for young realtors dealing with a difficult agent in a transaction? And it was funny to hear because, you know, they're from all these different markets across the country, but they all have experienced the agent who says, well, I've been in the business 30 years and I've never seen this, you know? And I love it. I don't love it. When an agent says that to me, I sort of love it because I'm thinking to myself, like, glad I could teach you something. Right. Right? You know? And so what advice did they have for dealing with these agents?
I think Michael is like that. He doesn't know everything. And as long as he's been in the business and as long as he'll be in the business, he'll never know everything. There's unique situations almost to every deal. So
yeah, he kind of spin that into like an educational thing, and he likes to learn, and so the reason that he's successful now is because he takes on all these new learning opportunities and all that kind of stuff, right? I think the other agent talked about how she's in her mind says, maybe that was Jennica, that's like, I'm going to win. Maybe I'm not going to win on this little negotiation here, or maybe you'll still be mean to me, but eventually we're going to be friends. Right? And I think she said something like, you don't know this yet, but I'm taking you for drinks or something like that.
Oh, did she?
I think she said that.
I would have loved that line, but I did not hear that.
Yeah, I love that idea too. I mean, not that you want to be friends with this kind of nasty person necessarily, but like the attitude there is what I think I like, where it's like, you might win this, you know, whatever, but you don't have the power to ruin my day. And I'm sort of adding my own angle on this, I think, but you know, the whole idea of like, you don't have the power to make me mad, you know, so you can call me and be as nasty to me as you want to, but I'm not going to let that affect me. Right.
And it is really hard in your first few years because of the insecurity, like going up against an agent maybe that's been in the business for a really long time. And I think someone said, like, alluded kind of to that it's hard because you feel insecure, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong. Right. It just means that it's a unique situation. And even you, right? Like, how often do we come and ask you a question and you're like, okay, let's talk this through. Let's think about this. And even at our sales meeting, a really wild thing came up with inspection notices. And so, yeah, for an agent to say, I've never seen this before, you go, well, okay. And I mean, that'll be how it is.
By the way, I'm getting distracted because slightly off topic, but along the lines of what you just said, you know, I just wrote an offer on a house this morning and I was meeting face to face with the seller, and along the lines of like, you never know what's going to happen. So the seller and I are looking through the contract, and I mentioned that, hey, it might come up because she's selling, like, it's not her house, she's getting it through a trust or whatever. I'm like, it may come up through the title search that there's some sort of big bill. There might be like a lien from the sewer company or a mechanic's lien from the guy who put the roof on or whatever. We don't know. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, where does it say in here that I have to pay that? Like if there's a big sewer bill, where does it say that I have to pay that? And I'm like thinking to myself, and I even said to her, I'm like, I don't know if it says that in here because the bill is like in your name. So that's what says that you have to pay the bill, right? But let's look through the contract together and see where it says that.
Oh my gosh, that's an awesome question.
Isn't it an awesome
Yes.
question? Because it doesn't say it in there from what I could find.
Question. Yeah. And homeowners association fees come up all the time, especially with trusts.
So there's the title paragraph that kind of listed out the title stuff that we were talking about, and basically said if I find something as the buyer that I don't like, maybe in the survey, then I can present it to you, the seller, and then we can negotiate and maybe kill the deal or maybe come to an agreement, right? But it didn't say anything about if the seller finds something that she didn't know about. And I think that the way that the contract is written is good because it protects the buyer who, and me and Mike in this case, could have had a lot of money invested into this deal. Hundreds of dollars in inspections, tons of money into appraisal, lots of money into survey, whatever, right? And so it wouldn't really be fair to me if then 3 weeks later the seller finds out, oh gosh, that roofer did place that lien on my property, and I do have to pay him, but I don't want to, so I can't sell. I'm not going to sell to you, That wouldn't be fair to the buyer from my perspective. But I'm like, I don't. And then the other paragraph that we looked at was the paragraph that lists out what the different closing costs are. Mm-hmm. And, buyer's closing costs are this, seller closing costs are this. But even that paragraph didn't say, like, very directly and clearly at least, that the seller has to pay their old bills. And so.
Yeah. Really? Now I'm super intrigued.
Well, we'll look at it after this.
But yes, because that question comes up. I've had buyers say, what if there's liens? Because when I explain what a title company is, what they do, then sometimes they say, well, what happens if there is a lien or an unpaid bill or something?
Yeah.
And it's like,
and
well,
it's always like,
the
seller has to pay it. But where does it say that in the contract? And maybe it doesn't. It's just assumed, But I'm like...
But then if they don't pay it, well, and there is times that especially foreclosures, I have seen where you have to pay all past liens.
Yeah. So we'll dig deeper into that. And, I'm not giving legal advice on this podcast, right? You can interpret the contract however you want or ask your attorney if you have specific questions about that. But it was just a fun example of even this morning something came up when I was like, wow, I just truly don't know the answer to that question,
So what about the technologies? Let's talk about the technologies and tools that did any of them strike you?
I loved hearing that Isabel uses Trello because I'm a big Trello lover.
Yes.
And I use Trello, Trello.com. It's a free app or a free website, I guess. That has
they do
an
have app. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I use that sort of for more like big picture planning and kind of like project management, But like I have a board that's all about my banking stuff and where I keep track of all my credit cards and all, like logins and things like that. Should I even say that?
No, you do?
I don't. Actually, I take that back. I take that back. I don't have that. I'm deleting it right now. The thing that I don't have. But, if we're going to do a website project, right, then that's a great place for me to go and add what they call cards for different updates that I want to make to the site. And then I can assign those cards to the different people,
and then we have one for the podcast.
We have one for this podcast.
Podcast ideas. Mm-hmm.
So podcast ideas, guest ideas, topics to talk about, and all that kind of stuff. And then I always have a left column that's what I call assets. So we list out like the opener for the podcast and that kind of stuff. But she uses it specifically for task management, right? So we asked, what are you guys using for task tracking or task management? Our company, mainly what we use is RealtyJuggler. Most of our agents, what we use is RealtyJuggler, which keeps track of tasks and assigns them dates and due dates and puts things on their calendar and all that kind of stuff. But I love that she uses Trello for that. And she makes it not public, but she shares it with her client so they can, the whole idea, I love the idea of accountability, right? So your client can log in and see the things that you're doing and be like, whoa, what's this one? You haven't done this one yet. That might be annoying, but I love the idea of accountability. And also, since our company is all about educating our client, I think it's great that our client would then be able to log in and see what we're doing and ask questions about it. And she makes videos about each thing that her clients can watch.
Right. So this is the part of where the 30 under 30, where my ears perk up and I really start to make the notes, because I look over at Caleb and I'm like, what were all your notes? Look at all those things.
Yeah.
And I just have a couple things written down because I love technology and I like things that are really cool. And so how she uses Trello is she has a buyer board and a seller board specifically. She has a generic one where she has all the tasks written out, and in those tasks she does, on some of them, include video. Mm-hmm. And so every time she has a buyer or seller, she immediately sets it up, sends it over to them, and then that's where she starts pulling it over. So she makes a copy of that. So she just has a generic format, which was public. So I did Google it, and I did dig deep enough, and I found it. So
good.
It's obviously going to be a little bit different because it's different states, but it was definitely inspirational. So I thought it was really a really fabulous thing in how she uses Trello. But within Trello, she was talking about for the video and video recording, she uses Loom, which is a Chrome extension.
Yeah, so Loom is awesome. I used Loom recently. I don't know if you remember, but I made a bunch of videos that I put on our company
is that what
intranet.
You used? Loom? Okay.
Uh-huh. I use Loom to make these little training videos about like how to use DocuSign or my Gmail tips and some stuff like that for screen sharing. It was free. It was really easy to use.
Do you use it, Caleb?
No, I do not use it yet, but I hopefully will use it in the future. But I think like the reason she uses it, and like you said, she puts it in there on Trello, is every time she gets a new question from a buyer or a seller, she puts it on that document, and she basically can walk through the seller or with the buyer on like where they need to sign or what this means or what that means. That way she doesn't have to answer phone calls and explain it.
Yeah, so she, again, with her automation, her major push for automation, she kind of was a little bit funny in that comment. If she tries to list out everything, if there's anything new, she adds it. And her whole goal is to not have to answer any questions because they're already all answered. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was just a little
If you were a client and you asked me, hey, Adam, what's a survey? And I responded to your email with a video that basically answered the question but sort of had some other stuff in it, do you think you'd be okay with that? Or would you want me to like specifically answer your specific question just to you?
Well, I don't know. So I guess I'm more of I like the personal aspect of everything and how it applies specifically to each scenario, because I think it can be a little bit different, like a survey. So a survey is probably a really good idea if you're going to build a fence in the city where the gutters are almost touching. Mm-hmm. Maybe that. So you can't really answer all those questions without it being too general. That's why I like the specifics. But then at the same time, what is a survey? Is great video to watch and then handle their specific questions.
So maybe they'll ask less questions if they would have already seen some of her other videos.
Yeah, I think that's the point that she puts all these videos on there so that if they have a question, they go and watch that video and hopefully that answers their question. And if they have a further question, they come and ask her.
Yeah, so I think it minimizes. The videos minimize the questions that she has to answer over and over and over again.
So did you look into Canva? I think
I use Canva. I have in the past. You don't use Canva?
Is Canva the thing that makes like really easy like Facebook pages and landing pages and stuff?
I don't use it for that, but no, just images.
What does it do?
Like so you can. It's like PicMonkey. Have you used PicMonkey at all? It's kind
You're
of
a technology girl.
It's kind of just one of those so you can make some really cool just. Anything from flowcharts to just, it's an easy way to do graphics.
You made that video. Remember a few months ago you made some sort of video explaining the home buying process or something?
Oh, but that was probably through Powtoons.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, for my first-time home buyer class? Yeah, so that was through Powtoons. So
what is Canva?
So it's the same. It's Canva, PicMonkey, in essence, is a way to allows the everyday person to do graphics.
Okay, so you could make a flow chart or whatever.
Sharing.
Okay, interesting.
What was the one social media site that you use that you talked about in the sales meeting that like posts your Facebook ad each month?
Oh yeah, so I love this site called If This Then That. IfTTT.com is the website, and
you can go in a rabbit hole on that thing, though.
you can get in a rabbit hole in that. So to me, the best thing to do is you can look through some of the I think they call them recipes or something like that, the more popular recipes that they have, and then you can go specifically to like Facebook or Gmail and see what kind of recipes are available for that. But like I have it set up to say, if one of them that I use is if it's, I don't know, the morning or 7:30 a.m. or whatever, then text message Adam the weather.
Right. That's
so
right.
every morning I get a text message that tells me what the weather in St. Louis is for the day. Right? Or if it's the first of the month, then tweet out to Adam's Twitter, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month.
Right.
Well, I also have one now that goes to my LinkedIn every single day that says, like, happy Thursday, everyone. Right?
I thought you just did it on Tuesdays.
LinkedIn is every single day. And that's that's, you know, a little off topic again, but that's the crazy thing about LinkedIn is that I think it's A, so underused, and B, so many people have so many friends on there that when you log in once a week or twice a week or whatever,
Or once a year,
whatever it is, people they don't log in like they do to Facebook 25 times a day. So even though I'm posting on there every single day, happy Monday, everyone, happy Tuesday, everyone, the same people aren't really seeing that over and over again. And it's amazing to me when I log into my LinkedIn 2 or 3 times a week that I get people liking that all the time. Hey, thanks. Hey, like. I'm like, don't you notice that I post this thing every single day and kind of wonder what's going on with it? But I don't think they're seeing it.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Okay.
anyway,
Nope.
If this, then that is my social media share, I guess, for this podcast.
So one of the other ones that they brought up was listings to lead. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I always run back to my computer and start researching all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it did look really interesting. So I guess that it's depending on how many listings you have a month, you pay on that basis. So 0 to 10, 11 to so on and so forth. So it will, I think, create landing pages and then all these posts. And I haven't used it yet, but it looks pretty powerful in the way that you can take one listing and really cover all your bases with advertising from social media to creating a landing page.
Yeah, so to me, the thing that would be really valuable is if it does all this posting and stuff for you automatically, right? Because through our company, we have several different tools that we use to make landing pages for listings. And through our lender, we have another tool that does it. And we have all these things have all these tools and technology that you can use. You know, every company out there, every real estate company has 1,000 different tools and technology that you can use. The problem is it's crazy overwhelming. There's way too much of it, right? And so
it's not all in one place. I feel like most is in one place.
Uh-huh.
So that's good. Like on the total experts say, most of it's in one place. But then this, I think, I don't know that we need it, but it had some other functions like property evaluations. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that would fit into the pricing model exactly, because it really is geared towards the number of listings that you post or do a month.
Yeah.
But it looks like this kind of houses everything in one spot, not just most, everything.
So to me, our strategy growing this company has always been like find the best solution for each problem. And we've kind of taken an approach that's like not to find one app or whatever, that one thing that does it all, because we want to find the thing that does it best. That's why we use MailChimp and not, Real Geeks for our mail. That's why we use DocuSign and not the free ones from this website. That's why we use RealtyJuggler for task plans. That's why we use Whizza, right? And that's why we have all these different tools that we use. But does listings to lead, if I get a listing, does it automatically make this landing page and then automatically post it to my Facebook and then automatically send any leads that come from that to my CRM and then automatically text message that person and then automatically add them to my email drip campaign, now we're talking. I want a solution
now
that does
I cannot answer. I was going to test it out. It's not all that expensive. If it really does everything that I have in my head and it's not clunky, it's very user friendly, very easy. To me, I think it's worth it. But again, haven't tested it, but I have obviously this listing coming up that's launching this week that I was actually going to test it out on and then just kind of.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it. I just think it's so interesting. And most of these apps don't do exactly what we want them to do. Like I just said, we use all these different apps for like each specific thing, but then we're able to sort of like tie them together through like if this then that or through Zapier.com, which is kind of an if this then that competitor. And so, it's interesting. I'd love to hear more about it from you. Let's see. Did you write down any of the books they suggested?
Yes, of course, because I'm also a book junkie.
One of them said Mindset by Carol Dweck, which to me is an amazing book. I love it. I think it's not just for real estate. It's not even about real estate, I don't think. But remember Than Merrill, he suggested that book when we interviewed him for the podcast. And I've then since read it and listened to tons of her interviews. And I'm like lecturing my dad. But the other day, my dad, we were playing basketball with my nephew, and he's like 8. And my dad's like, "You're a natural talent, Lucas." And I was like, "Dad, you can't say that. Don't call him a natural talent." Because everything that I learned in this book, Mindset, says that would then teach Lucas that he's just naturally good and not give him any motivation or reason to like practice to get better.
Yes.
And so then all of a sudden someone else will practice and get better and be better than Lucas at basketball. And Lucas will just think, I'm not good.
Which is funny because the other person that I brought that book up to, they said how amazing the book was. But the one thing they followed that up with was how it changed their parenting style.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to. It's
amazing. And so that my nephew's crazy good at soccer. And I'm like, you practiced really well, Lucas. Like, great effort today at getting better, instead of being like, you're just a natural talent, And
right.
So I'm no mindset expert, but I'm trying.
The example he uses, his little girl said, and we all get hard on ourselves, like, I can't do that. And he adds, yet. You can't do that yet. And I guess that came from the book.
Okay. What other books and podcasts?
So it's 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, which I think I've read years ago. But
I need to re-listen to that one. I listened to that a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's all about automating.
Yeah.
Get out of your own way.
Right.
Stop being the bottleneck in your business.
How to be a badass. But I could not find that one exactly.
I don't think it's spelled badass. I think it's like B asterisk D or B, bad. I don't know. It's not, it's that other one you like, the subtle art of not giving an F word. Mm-hmm. It's probably something like that.
And then another one was BAWSE, but it was BAWSE.
Because she has that's some sort of acronym.
Yeah.
It wasn't it Be a Boss, or was the title just Boss?
Just BAWSE, I think.
Okay.
5-second rule.
What's that one?
That's a Mel Robbins one.
Is that about like you can, as long as you can get over that fear, you can do anything? And
no, I think the 5-second thing is a Mel Robbins thing. It's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just do it, and expands on all that. But I haven't listened to this book yet.
I've heard at some point, like, kind of like what you just said, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just do it. It's sort of like the anticipation of doing something that holds people back, not the actual doing of the thing.
Yeah, like everything. The simplest task of like getting out of bed, like instead of hitting your snooze button, you just go, okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and
I'm out of bed, and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad.
Yes.
Or right before you jump in the pool, you're like, oh my god, I don't know, and then you jump in, you're like, oh, it's great.
Right. So I don't know all the philosophy behind that one. Never split the difference.
That's a negotiation book, I presume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then Michael had ninja selling and financial prospecting.
Fanatical
prospecting. I think I have that book here.
I haven't read it yet.
I'm interested in the ninja selling one because my business model, I guess you could say, is like having great relationships and building a referral based business. And I think he said that book is kind of about that. I don't want to read a book about like making cold calls.
All the ones you said.
Okay. And then the only 2 podcasts I had written down was Impact Theory and Bigger Pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get anything else?
I actually have listened to a couple of Bigger Pockets, and I like.
You do like that one? I haven't.
Caleb, I've heard from Bigger Pockets almost always from people who are listening to podcasts about real estate. That must be like the number one. What is it all about?
I heard of it.
I think it mainly tailors more to like the real estate investor.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different videos and like just different ways that you can go about like the investing in real estate, like wholetailing, and just flipping properties. And they have a couple of different like kind of calculators that kind of tell you if it's a good deal for different aspects of it. So
better than our calculators?
Our spreadsheet that we use.
Yeah.
So,
No,
Caleb, we had lunch yesterday
them.
with that guy, and he kept using the word wholetailing, and now you're using it. What is that?
I'm not really sure. I need to look more into that.
So I'm thinking that's a wholesale deal where instead of selling it off market to an investor, they sell it to an end buyer.
Yeah, I think
Maybe.
so.
There's something they also call like pre-habbing and whatnot, where where they'll buy a property and do a very light rehab or just even like a clean out
the hard
to it.
things. They like put on a new roof, do some tuck point, and get the outside. I've seen that more lately.
But then an investor will still buy it, or maybe that'll make it so that like a first-time home buyer who's handy or something like that would buy it. All right, anything else we want to talk about today?
You asked about accreditations, and I thought that Michael was interesting, as he was the whole time. One of the accreditations that he got was the accredited staging professional.
Uh-huh.
And not that he wanted to be a stager, but he wanted to understand the philosophy behind it to better help his sellers understand why we ask them to do what we do when we're asking them to declutter, and how the eye moves from left to right, and when you scan a room and you walk into a house, like the psychology of, and if you have something, a lot of knickknacks, the more you break that eye up and the more you break up that scan, the less they can take in and focus on the house.
I love his concept, which is a simple one, never stop learning.
Right. And that's basically, he was, and then there were some other accreditations that he mentioned that I thought were really interesting, but not available around here.
Well, CRS is.
All that I have.
Certified, isn't that certified residential specialist?
But his was CRS 204.
That's a specific class, right?
Mm-hmm. It's for real
Tailors
estate investing.
more to the investor.
That one I would do in a heartbeat, but they don't offer it here.
I'd like to consider getting my CRS designation.
I think the other interesting thing you said about the accreditations, or what do you call those? The different certifications you can get, is that he actually got a couple deals because he had that, and the other realtor didn't have those accreditations.
That was the staging one, which I thought was
it was the staging one, and he said like he knows a little bit about it, but he doesn't know everything that a staging professional would know. But the lady that was looking for the realtor to list her house was saying that she wanted somebody that knew a lot about staging, and he was able to say, well,
I'm an accredited staging professional.
Yeah. So it got him that listing.
And if nothing else, it gave him the confidence to talk about it too. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. We've been here about an hour now, and I want to thank you both for sitting in on this. I really wanted to kind of give an overview of the panel before we forget, and for everyone else to listen and kind of get some ideas. This is definitely a podcast that was tailored more towards realtors. But we love our listeners, so if you have questions or topics that you want us to cover in the future, like always, please email podcast@hermannlondon.com and let us know what you're wanting to hear. And thanks so much for listening. Take care.